up and then co-speaker. I'm not sure who they are and I don't remember their names. So I would like you guys to come up here and help me with this, please. Is it you? Well, sit. I know Brenda. Come sit, Brenda. I love Brenda. Oh, Brenda.
All that's on tape.
Cliff. I love you. I love you too. And I want to introduce Cliff. I don't know Cliff that well, but I do know of him.
Shit.
Good things, good things. And I know Brenda, who's been through a whole lot. And she is my strength and hope, and I love her experience. I do. Before we open the floor for sharing, which we'll do at the, no, not now. All right. Leave. Okay.
Thanks, Debbie.
Hi, Cliff.
Hi.
My name's Brenda. I'm an addict.
Hi, Brenda.
I'm grateful to be here this weekend. I'm experiencing We Grow with Love 10. And what I'm going to share, I hope, comes from my higher power and not from me. And I'm sure some of it will be my own personal experience. And I was thinking, you know, what really is the definition of freedom? When I was a kid, 12, 13 years old, it used to be get on my bike and take off, you know, run away. That's how I handled things. Go to the park and get on the swings and just swing and pretend. I think the next time that I ever thought about freedom was maybe 18. And I thought my freedom would come in a marriage. And I always try what looking back, I've always tried what I thought. Then I really found it when I started using, you know. The very first chemical I put in my body took me someplace that I had never ever been. And I didn't feel anything from anybody. And I thought I found it. And I looked for it for a long time after that. And couldn't find it. Not like that. I kept having to do more and more and more. And could never get what I found that first time. That led me down the road of addiction. And that took me to places that I didn't want to go. Places that I said I would never go. And then came this moment of clarity in my life. I woke up one morning and there was someone in the bed next to me and I didn't know who they were, what had happened, and it was like, oh my God, this has to change. I can't do this anymore. And I had been introduced to this program a couple of years prior to that moment of clarity, called Narcotics Anonymous. And there was something there that when I got up that one morning, it was like I knew that's where I needed to go to change. And there was a little bit of freedom in knowing that, oh, I gotta change. I think that might have been one of the first times that it wasn't your fault. It was I have to change. I had no clue even then what that meant. Today I know what it means. I guess freedom is something that I've looked for all my life. Coming to the program, working the steps, has given me some freedom. You know, they say the sky's the limit, and I truly believe that. It's a lot of work to get there. I've been around a couple of 24s, and today I know that when I'm going through something to get the freedom, I'm having to work my hiney off. Somewhere along the way, I came to believe in a power greater than myself. And I came to believe that this higher power had a plan for my life. And I learned that if I would get out of the driver's seat and let my higher power drive, and I would just go along, I wasn't fighting for freedom. It was there. And then we'll usually stop, you know. He has these stops planned out for me. And sometimes they're okay, and I'm okay with them. And sometimes they're not. I, during those times, have to work really hard to get okay with where I am and where we've stopped. I have a disease that wants what it wants yesterday, and it's today, and it hasn't happened yet. Because I have a piece of recovery today, I know that it's okay to know that, but I don't have to act out on it. You know, I know that this big picture that my higher power has painted for me is going to be the most awesome, beautiful thing that I've ever experienced. And right now I'm on the journey to get to it. Things like this convention, you know, being out here in the creation, in the rain and sunshine, around the campfires, laughing, listening to other people laugh. You guys are all part of my journey. The basic text tells me that if I work the steps and follow the suggestions, that I can get freedom from active addiction. And in the beginning, that's what I thought the problem was. If I wouldn't get high, I wouldn't wake up like this in the mornings. And in the beginning, that's what it was. But today it's so much more. So much more for me. I'm experiencing things today that I never dreamed I would experience. I have feelings today that I thought I would never allow to happen. You know? I wasn't going to feel like that. I was going to be different. People were going to treat me different. And that hasn't been the case. You know, I'm a human being, and I live on this earth with the rest of human beings, and we're all not perfect. I make mistakes. I have character defects. I call my sponsor and ask her if I can act out on them. She says if I want to. Today I know what happens when I do that, so, you know, I have convention committee meetings in my head. All the time. And again, what I'm saying is, for me, when I can do what the book suggests, you know, when it says we must, I have to. When it says principles before personalities, I have to. My life depends on this program. I have a life today, you know. It's not the one I wanted. It's not the one I dreamed about. But this very minute, it's okay. And I'm okay in it. My higher power takes care of my needs. And sometimes he lets me take care of my wants. I don't wake up in the mornings anymore and look to see who's next to me. I remember what I did last night, and I can wake up with a smile. I have daily meditations that I apply to my life today. And I know that I am truly a miracle. To be an addict and not put chemicals in my body today and treat people with respect and treat myself with respect. I know I wouldn't be where I am without this program. And without especially the women in this program who have encircled me when my higher power is shaking the rug and going, nope, we're not doing this. Because then I feel like I'm suspended in air and not going anywhere and afraid to fall. You guys come around and you're there for me. And you let me be me. That's a freedom today, you know? I can be me. I can come and go. And you don't judge me. You accept me for what I am and who I am. Nowhere else on the face of this earth do I know of a place that, and people that can do that. It's not my biological family. How I wish it could be, but it's just not. You know, it's not even my children today. And that's okay. HP's got a plan for them too. I love what is offered in this program. I love seeing a newcomer come in that has such a desire to be different. Because I don't ever want to lose that kind of desire. For me, that's scary. I don't want to go back to where I was. So I have to work for it today. I've had to retrain my thinking and you guys have taught me how. Because every time you share, I get something. And I take it with me. And I try it on and see if it fits. And you know, sometimes it fits like a glove. And I like that. And when it's not fitting me, not just right, not yet, and I'm hanging on and waiting and waiting and waiting, you guys tell me it's okay. And today I know that when it finally fits, it's perfect. And there's that moment of freedom that is so much more than what I got when I put that first chemical in my body. And I'm a very grateful recovering member of Narcotics Anonymous and very proud to be that. That's all I got.
I'm Cliff Maddock.
Hi,
Cliff.
I was reflecting a little bit, some people have asked, what are you going to say? Thought about it, and I haven't thought anything about this really, which is kind of unusual. I'm an addict. I get a thought in my head. I usually run with it, but still, I was thinking about, what was freedom, in the beginning and stuff like that. And I like what another addict shared about, riding a bicycle and, the real childish freedoms. I think that's horribly important because, my using and my behaviors while I used are second nature. Second nature. I did not come out of the womb lying, stealing, and using. I didn't. So I have that freedom when I come to NA. I just forgot how to use it. And so it's important that, I remember that stuff because, that's the key back to where I want to be. And of course the drugs came in eventually, and, and then freedom was more like, a rock opera, running through the park with holy jeans and free love and stuff like that, which I never found. I always wanted to, never did. And that's because, I'm an addict, and, the parks were more like, cemeteries and, and orchards and stuff, and, and the free love was, it was never free and it was never love. And the holding jeans were because I couldn't afford new ones. I've always wanted to be free, and, and you would think, where I live, that's something that's afforded me with birth, but I've had so very little of, and unfortunately most of it's been by choice, because, and it says it in Another Look, the pamphlet Another Look is, addiction is not freedom, and, so when I came to NA, Like it says in our text, if we made a list of things we want, sold ourselves short. As all I wanted was not to go to prison. I didn't care if I used again. I just didn't want to go to prison. I haven't gone yet. And that brings us right to freedom, because just because I'm not using doesn't mean I can't go. I'm very capable of doing some really horrible things in recovery. Unfortunately, I choose not to. And the times I have chose to do it, fortunately, I haven't been caught. It comes down to that. I've drove recklessly. Been horribly, negligent. Around others, and not malicious stuff like where I've plotted out things. But there have been times where I could have gotten in a lot of trouble, and gratefully, I haven't. But when I heard this topic, the thing that this brought to my mind is a friend of mine has this T-shirt that he really likes, and he's always wanted to get mine. But it says released from the horrors of addiction, and that's what freedom was for me in the beginning. Was taking a step out of out of active addiction. And that was a great freedom for me. That anytime that I went into active addiction, whether it be physical use of drugs or everything except physical use of drugs, I could come to NA and receive some freedom again. And wow, and I don't know, I don't know if it never got any better, if I'd be satisfied with that, but I was for the moment. And somebody told me, said, Cliff, he'd tell me, suffer. You have my permission to suffer, and I would, I would, and then I'd choose freedom again. I finally got what this old guy was saying was, that this suffering was optional. I only had to suffer so long before I sought help. Another addict mentioned it before. That help, go get the help. And so I started picking up on that. That I don't have to suffer for very long before I get help. Wow, that was an incredible relief. It's these things that when you hear them, it hits you like a ton of bricks. Like, my God, how stupid could I have been? I've been going through all this stuff, and all I had to do was ask for help. When it started hurting, just stop. Pray to God. Work some steps, talk to your sponsor, all the stuff that you tell us. And I lived on that for a long time, and it was great. And this is the thing I will never know. I don't know if you guys have been telling me this for years, I just finally got it, or if it all of a sudden you guys start saying this stuff, and and I was like, wow, part of it, or what the deal is. I assume that you've been telling me this for years, and I just finally get it. But the thing that's been real big in my life has been, I don't have to wait to get sick before I get better. I can pray today before I'm in a crisis. It says in our literature that we find that when we pray our higher power, it eases the pain. But we find if we pray, we will hurt less often and less intensely. My God. Now, I know that's been there for a long time. I just finally got that. But that's been my key to freedom. How free do I want to be? Am I willing to call my sponsor when I'm having a good day? Am I willing to call my sponsor when I'm having just a day? And I better damn be ready to call my sponsor when I'm having a rough day. But the thing is, if I call him every day, regardless of what type of day I'm having, when the shit really hits the fan, my suffering's minimized. My release from the horrors of addiction, whatever they may be, they don't need to happen. I don't need to go there today before I seek the help of this program. And that's the great truth for me, today is that as long as I choose to live to the best of my ability, and my God, now there's a lot of people here who know me. I am far from perfect. But the more I try, to go towards, that idea of, what's right, the more freedom I'm allotted in life. And I guess that's all I got. I'll pass.
Before we open the floor for sharing, it's gone, guys. That's my higher power, I'm sure. I need to remind everyone that you are being taped. If you wish not to be taped, please let me know. For that, the tape can be turned off. The floor is open.
Thanks, Gabby. Thanks, Gabby.
You're welcome. My name is Debbie. I'm an addict.
Hi, Debbie.
I kept telling my sponsor a couple weeks before this that this weekend I can't wait to go because I'm going to be me. I am just going to let loose and be me. I have laughed. Do I need to be up there? I can't go real loud. I've looked really forward to this weekend because I really wanted to focus on just being free to be me. And I've laughed, I've cried for happiness, I've cried for sadness, a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, and that's really cool to me. I needed that freedom all my life, just for that, to be me. Today I'm not sure who me is, but I'm learning that, and that's really cool for me. That's all I got.
Thanks, Debbie.
Hi, I'm Bonnie and I'm an addict.
Hi.
I have freedom in my life today, but I think the question is how free do I want to be? And yes, I still feel really good, but boy, the weirdness that goes on around here, and to realize, I want to thank you guys because I think I put limits on how free I want to be, and I come here and I listen to you and I watch you and I realize that I could be a lot freer than I am. But it's hard for me to imagine that because I do feel real free today, and to know that I can even be more. And then it's about the decision of, freedom comes with a price. Am I willing to pay that price? Am I willing to go into those dark, scary places that I know still exist in there? Am I willing to let that come up? And, I taught trust. Oh, I got trust today. Am I ready to put that trust into action and know that I'm going to be okay? Do I really trust that you guys are okay? But I had a lot of debate about coming, this workshop. This was the one. How free do I want to be? And I guess that's a question that you guys can't answer for me. You can just show me how free you are. And then I listen to you share about the things that you go through to get there, and honestly, it does frighten me. And then I say, well, then you get in your toolbox and you pull out courage. Because courage is what enables me to stay frightened but do it anyways. I was taught early on that I didn't have to be willing, just do it anyways. I didn't have to understand how it worked, just believe that it would and do it anyways. And I found a lot of freedom in doing that. Freedom from active addiction, boy, that's a big old fat mouthful. Because I didn't realize, you know, I too early on just thought that just meant not using, but freedom from active addiction, there's a lot that goes in that package, and just more is being revealed. And sometimes, I guess what I've learned is it's okay to stop where I'm at for a little while and enjoy that, but there is more, and I'm only robbing myself if I stay there. And I think this weekend kind of gave me that I have a choice. Either I can feel less than all of you and that I don't deserve to be where you're at, or you know what, be willing or do it anyways to get there, you know. And I'm just really glad to be here, and I guess I'm having another one of those, the more longer I'm here, the less I realize I really know, you know. And that's what I always say, the longer you're here, the less you know, you know. So enjoy it while I'm young and know everything in recovery, and because I am young in recovery, you know. So, but that's how I feel like I found that it's okay to enjoy where I'm at, but just keep wanting more, because that's why I came here, was for more, because that's what I wanted out there was more, and that's what I came here for. But anyways, I'm really grateful to be here, and I want to thank you for sharing, even though it frightens me, your pain, because I know that's what gets you to that more freedom. So with that, that's why
Thank you. Thank you.
My name's David. I'm an addict. A few weeks ago, I'm in school, and school was coming to an end, and it was kind of busy. And then, with that, work was coming to an end too. So it was time to, good time to take a break. And I went traveling with Gabby and visited family and went camping. It was beautiful, and knew I had some things to deal with when I got back, because, like I said, things were busy just before we left. So I just, wanted to go and enjoy myself and know that, oh, okay, there's things to worry about when I come back. And I come back, I get a really bad cold, and I'm all dizzy in my ears. My ears are stuffed up, so I'm like, can't even think straight. And then my grandma dies. So here's all this laundry that's backed up, and my bags are still like packed, and I gotta be looking for a job, but hey, you don't schedule when your grandma dies. So like I go and drive across country, get a speeding ticket because I'm late to carry a casket, and then I'm there, and so I'm around family that's all like, I'm usually kind of tense around in the best circumstances, and like new schools are, semesters already started, and I don't have a new job yet, and I'm already behind now on papers, and I'm like, here's this weekend coming up, and here's We Grow with Love. And I got even less laundry that's clean now. I got more stacked up. There's like, the fridge is starting to be a little stale. It's been like 3 weeks since I've really opened it. And I'm still trying to, I'm still getting over this cold, and I'm still trying to let it hit me, the fact that, Grandma's gone. And all the crazy things that went on, with the family coming over after the funeral and going through the house and just grabbing stuff. And I've got these papers I need to write. Now I got 2 due, as soon as I get back from We Grow with Love. And it's like, we're like, okay, this is when We Grow with Love is. It's not, like I can decide, oh, I'm ready for We Grow with Love in August, so let's plan it for that, It's now, and I want this. I've got all this other stuff I need to do. So it's like, okay, just throw a bunch of stuff in the car and let's go. And we're driving down here thinking about some of the things that, would have been nice to bring along. I'm like, oh, man, you know what we should have done? And Gabby says, what? I said, this. It's like, I'm here now, and I'm getting just what I need. All that stuff's still waiting for me. But, there's this. And, that doesn't mean that I'm complacent. That doesn't mean that I don't reach for more freedom and more joy. But it starts with being able to appreciate that I can enjoy a moment. It's just really wild to me to be able to see, any member of my family be able to do something fun and be in the moment when there's this other stuff going on that I can't do anything about right now because I'm in Camp Mac. The only way I could do anything about that stuff right now is if I, brought stuff with me, which would have ruined my time, or if I left here, And I also had wanted to do my fifth step here. And it's so beautiful. This is exactly, the kind of day that in my heart, I had this vision of, what I wanted my, this one to look like, and I'm ready to just tip that wheelbarrow over and have done with it and move on, well, again, what am I going to do about that now? I learned the Serenity Prayer in my very first meeting. It doesn't just have, serenity to accept in it. It has the courage to change in it too. But it also has the wisdom to know the difference. And it's nice to know when I can just let something go for the moment. Talking about vision, having an image of what I'd like things to be. That's another thing that I'm very grateful for, having a vision of more freedom. How much freedom do I want? As much as I could possibly have, just the same way with the drugs. When I got clean, there was an atmosphere of panic that if we didn't strive for the maximum nirvana, maximum effort of constant, being able to appreciate the moment, we would crave drugs because we'd get bored with our life or whatever, and we'd end up using again. There's some truth to this. It's okay for me to have a healthy respect for the power and the danger, but to live in fear, like the disease is breathing down my neck, that's just, I'm really glad that I can have a vision of an ideal without having to, know that it's got to be that way right now. To me, being able to reach for something starts with being able to appreciate how things are, or at least accept them. Starts with 4 and 5. When I can say, okay, I am good enough, warts and all, all of a sudden I'm a lot more open to criticism. I'm a lot more okay with having a vision of what things could look like, and being okay that they might not ever quite get there, but let's, move that way. I'm a lot less uptight about other people not sharing that vision or being aware. That's okay too. That's all I got.
Thanks, David.
I love you, Grandma.
Hi, my name is Jonathan. I'm medic.
Hi, Jonathan.
We're all at different places in recovery, and this is just where I am. You hear a lot of talk about the steps and how steps apply. Somebody would talk about a certain spiritual principle, and they'll talk about a certain step, and it's like I have a total different concept of what that spiritual principle, where that lies. And when you're talking about how free do you want to be, to me that's the third step. And it's one that I work on. It's one of the most beautiful steps there are. I have several favorite ones, and that's one of my favorite ones. It's one I have to work on every day. I'm an addict, and I am really good at complicating things. I will take anything and really overcomplicate it. The perfect example, I think I've talked to a couple different people about this, is this weekend. I registered early, and somewhat early, and there were all these rooms available. And I'm going, well, where do you want me to stay? And they said, well, wherever you want to. I said, what? If I were doing it, I'd have every single bed assigned to everybody. I'd have to tell you exactly where you're going to be. And then, and I was lost. I didn't even know what to do. I moved 4 times before I settled in. And then I moved last night again, so that's 5 since I've been here. And how am I supposed to bitch about anything unless somebody told me, where I had to be? And then there was the meal tickets. That's the other thing that got me. It was like, 1 ticket, Who would have thought? I'd have had 7 of them. I really would have. They'd been all stapled together, and you had to hand one each time you come in, you know. The simplicity is remarkable. These are the concepts that don't even enter my train of thought. I really complicate them. You know, if I can organize something that doesn't need to be organized, I'll do it, you know. I'll line up those lines of sand at the beach, you know. And the third step has a lot to do with freedom. I talked to my sponsor, and you know, I want to fix, manage, and control everything. I want to control every single thing in my environment. Everybody should do what it is I want them to do. Everything has to be the way I want it to be. The weather needs to be the way I want it to be. Everything has to be my way. I am the center of the universe, and I know it. And I talked to my sponsor about different problems I was having with different people in my home group, and he looked me right in the eye and he said 2 things. He says, well, you're self-centered and you lack faith. And I looked at him, and it's the first time someone had ever called me self-centered, and I looked at him and didn't see judgment. There was no judgment in that call. It was simply, these are character defects we need to work on. And it was the truth. I'm extremely self-centered. That's why I have to control everything my way. That everything needs to work out my way, and everything needs to work out in my time. And I lack the faith that things will work out in my higher power's way and in my higher power's time, and that's the way they're supposed to work out. As I'm beginning, because it is a process, as I'm working through this process of handing it over to my higher power, it is the greatest freedom I have come across. I no longer have to control everything in my world, and that's a tremendous, tremendous freedom for me. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Hi, family. I'm Nat. My name's Lisa. Hey, Lisa. You know, and I was thinking about how free do I want to be. I want to be free enough to apply the principles, try to apply in all my affairs. You know, and it's a funny thing that happened Friday on my way here. I was coming at 2 o'clock so I could get here by 6 o'clock because, you know, we live a little ways away. And I was ill. I just had surgery about 6 weeks ago, Tuesday. And I was thinking I wasn't going to be able to come. And now I've planned this for quite some time and what have you. And Camp Mac brings freedom for me. You know, it's like coming and we grow with love and being here, and I get to see a friend of mine who I don't see all the time, and I just kind of correspond with, and I like being with her and just being here in this area. You know, this is a great place that instills me to want to work my steps. You know, this is a place that, because it's not, I do a lot of conventions, of course, doing this taping thing and just being an addict that I am. I do a lot of conventions, and most of the conventions I do are hustle bustle, you know, 63 workshops or more, you know, and I'm going from the time I get up in the morning. I start working normally about 7 o'clock, and I don't go to bed until 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's a normal working convention taping weekend for me. This is freedom, you know, one workshop at a time, you know, playtime, you know, a little relaxing, good conversation. People can come sit at the table. I'm not, okay, when is your table? Your table will be ready in a minute. Please wait for me 5 minutes. I want to talk to you right now. You know, and I'm in this whole you know, in this fast lane. This is like, let me relax. Let me get centered. You know, the water, the tree, the atmosphere, you know, it's just all a spiritual experience. This is such a growth experience. We do grow with love. And so how free do I want to be? Free enough to make a commitment to try to come here, you know, and take care of me, because that's what it is. And do I want to be free enough to make a commitment to taking care of me? You know, and one of the things that I was thinking about is how, you know, imprisoned I felt not very long ago, and you know, self-made prisons that it talks about, and my self-made prison happened to be my weight, and I recently had a surgical procedure that is going to change my weight. So when you guys see me next year, no, I did not use I actually, hey, you know, when people start losing weight, people think somebody used, you know, so I did not, and it'll probably be very drastic. And so like here I am 35 pounds lighter in almost 6 weeks, and it's like I'm really feeling freer, you know. So how free do I want to be? I went through all kinds of avenues, jumped through all kinds of hoops to get this kind of freedom, you know. My 5th step, you know, and working on my 4th step, and do I want to be free enough to finish that, you know? Do I want to be free enough not to drag my feet on my step work, you know, to stay on the race, you know, no matter how much clean time I have, you know? Do I want to be free enough to realize that people just are who they are, no matter what I want them to be, you know? And that's my friends, that's my sponsees, because I want them all to work the steps right now, you know? And I want them to, look, here's a date, here's a time, and you know, I have one of my sponsees, she said, well, if you give me a date, I'll be done on that date. But then that's me exercising some form of control over when you're going to be done with your process. I said, I'm not going to give you a date, you know. And so those same kind of things apply to me. My sponsor says, well, you know, when you're done, you're going to be done, you know. But like the quest for freedom, you know, I always say it begins and ends with me. You know, it starts with me, you know, it starts with me having, you know, a desire to be free, you know, just like when I said, you know, my name is Lisa and I'm an addict, the very first desire to be free. I coupled that desire up with some willingness, and then I followed through with it with a commitment, you know. And so I think that's like the winning combination for me. That's like the TKO, you know, desire, willingness, and commitment. So I make a commitment to be free from active addiction every day, no matter what that addiction may be on that day, you know, whether it be, you know, like they had apple crisp and I couldn't have any. How free do I want to be? Do I want to try to eat the apple crisp and then be stuck in the bathroom for the rest of the, you know, convention because I'm sick? It would make me ill. Sugar, I cannot have any sugar. My body cannot tolerate it. Or do I want to eat things that I know? Or do I want to try to drink and eat at the same time? And it's all kinds of things that I've had to make a complete, like I've had, you know how when you get clean, you go through a metamorphosis, you know, you're a complete, you know, physical, spiritual, mental change. I've had to go through that same thing, you know, just so that I could do what I need to do for me, because I felt like a prisoner, you know. I felt like a prisoner without the use of drugs. And I don't know if you've ever had anything that has come between you and the God of your understanding, you know, that is so great that you feel like there's no way that you can get through it. And you have to take action or else you're going to die. And that's exactly how I felt. You know, I'm diabetic, you know, and I was starting to be tired all the time and grumpy and depressed and irritable and you know, all those were a bad combination to be in my spirit, because you know what happens when I become, you know, too far over to the left and in that halt and everything. That's when my disease shows up and says, come on, you know, well, we might as well get high. You're miserable anyway. And because I don't want to be miserable, and because I don't want to live the life, you know, that I have, you know, and I have to, you know, how free do I want to be? Am I willing to share? You know, it doesn't say, you know, I share with everybody. It says God, self, and another human being, the exact nature of my wrongs. And I'm not just talking about in a 5th step, as far as formally working the steps. Am I willing to share with someone what's going on? You know, tell God, admit it to myself, and share with another human being exactly what's going on, so that maybe if I have some things that I brought here with me this weekend, I don't have to leave with those. So how free am I willing to be? Am I willing to take the risk that we have to take in order to get freedom, you know, because freedom ain't free, for real, you know, it really is not. And I'm just grateful that I have an opportunity to come here and be with you again, you know, meet new people this year that I didn't meet last year. Some of you have seen me and heard me and, you know, tolerated me. But I'm just really grateful, because this to me, We Grow with Love, is about an avenue, a venue for freedom. You know, and if this is your first time here, you know, please, like, keep coming back. It gets better. Thanks.
My name's Debbie. I'm an addict. Hi, Debbie. We got a group hug.
All right. You know anyone else that would have sounded